Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. I hope you are all fine and must be enjoying with your life and family. It's our lecture number 31 for this subject, operations management, and today we'll discuss about the two very important topics, that is location strategies and layout strategies, and we'll discuss that what are the different advantages the different operations manager and the different organizations may have by applying the certain strategies related to location and layout. But let's have a brief review what we discussed in our last class. Students, in our last class we discussed about the globalization, that what is the global impact of globalization on the operations manager strategies all over the world, and we discussed the different reasons to be globalized, and I told you that the most important reason to be globalized is to have the less cost for operating your business. Another important thing about the reason to be globalized is sometimes the different resources are available at some particular locations all over the world. So in order to utilize those resources efficiently and effectively, sometimes it is very important for the entrepreneurs to have a certain location for their company and their production settings so that they can have a sort of competitive advantage over their competitors. Then students, we discussed some important issues in operations strategy, and we discussed some important elements of operations management strategy, that how the cost reduction advantage can be achieved by operating globally. Then most importantly, we discussed four important international operation strategy, and these strategies we discussed were about international strategy or the global strategy, and multi-domestic strategy, and most importantly transitional strategy. And we discussed these four strategies with respect to the two important parameters or variables, that is the local responsiveness according to the particular environment in which you are going to operate in future, and another important thing is the cost reduction. So these are the two very important variables about which we discussed these four international operation strategy, and we also discussed that what is the difference between all of these strategies and how the transitional strategy can be more important and can be more feasible in order to target both of these variables, that is local responsiveness as well as the cost reduction. Then students, we also discussed the importance of human resource strategy, that how the efficient utilization of the human resources should be possible in order to achieve the competitive advantage for the good organizations. Then we discussed about the labor planning, that what should be the human supply within the organization and what level of employees should be employed, whether it should be employed according to the production requirements or we should give the employment on the permanent basis. So we discussed both of these two cases. We also discussed the advantages and disadvantages of both of these labor planning approaches. Then students, most importantly, I told you that the work pattern and the doing business in the different organizations has now been changed. Now different organizations are talking about the flexible time, they're talking about the very flexible work schedules. So the purpose is to motivate the employees so that they can work efficiently and effectively, and ultimately the effect will be on the performance and the productivity of the organizations. So we discussed about the different work schedules and their impact on productivity. Then students, very importantly, again we discuss about the job design and the characteristics of the different job, that how the different characteristics of the job can be a source of motivation for the employees, and most importantly we discussed five important characteristics of job, that is skill variety, identity, significance, feedback, and autonomy. So we discussed all of these factors with respect to the working pattern in the organizations and how these characteristics can be indulged in the work environment in order to achieve the predetermined objectives of the organization. Then students, we also discussed the importance of teamwork, that is so important for the organizations. And now it's not the way to work individually, or there is a sort of isolation between the different departments. The success of any organization now depends on the teamwork, and the most importantly, this type of teamwork environment will be very helpful to create this synergy within the organization. So the aggregate output of something will always be better than the some of the individual outputs. That is the concept, you already know about that, is the synergy. And so the teamwork always help us to achieve this synergy in order to better improve our performance. Then students, strategically, there is another important concept we discussed in our last class, that is the ethical issues. Now, ethics is a sort of something which may not have the direct or immediate impact on the performance or on the productivity, but this is a sort of issue which may have some strategic impact or some long-term impact on the organizational viability, as well as on the organizational productivity, So it may not have the indirect and immediate impact, but it may have the strategic impact. So it is always important for the operations manager to give due importance to the ethical issues, that what is good and what is bad, and what is the way and what should be the way of doing business within the organization. So class, these were the topics we discussed in our previous lecture. Let's discuss what we will discuss in our today's lecture. Today we will discuss about the location strategy, that how the location will be helpful in achieving the competitive advantage for the organizations. And another important thing with respect to the location, we can see the location perspective from the cost point of view as well as from the innovation point of view. So we will discuss two of these approaches, that cost wise how we can take the advantage by applying the location strategy, and innovatively how we can use this location strategy in order to achieve the competitive advantage. Then students will discuss some important factors that affect the location decisions, that what are the important things and what are the important factors which should be properly examined and properly analyzed by the operation manager in order to take the location decision. So we will discuss the important parameters and important determinants of location decisions. Then most importantly, we will discuss some important methods of evaluating location alternatives. Now again, students, I will say that it is very important to have certain sort of calculations and mathematical formulas, so that on the basis of certain facts we can take the very good decisions. So in these methods of evaluating location alternatives, I will tell you about some different approaches in which we can mathematically find out and statistically find out that what can be the best location for the organization. Then students will also discuss about the layout decisions, and that of course has the strategic importance for the organization's viability. And layout decisions are very important, that how will be the setup and what should be the setup for your office, for your retail, what should be the setup, and how these inventories are going to be handled, so that there may be the no chances for any sort of loss, or cost wise as well it should be effective. So students, we will discuss some important types of layout. Among these types we will discuss the office layout, that what should be the layout of the particular office, so that the movement between the different personals and their intercommunication skills can be effectively and efficiently utilized. Then we will discuss about the retail layout, that what should be the layout in a superstore, and what should be the layout in simple retail outlet. Then we will also discuss another layout type, that is the warehouse and storage layout. Now this is a sort of layout in which we are interested to compensate most of our inventories efficiently and effectively, and where the material handling should be easy for the different workers. Then students will also discuss fixed position layout, that this is a sort of layout in which the different machines are fixed at proper point, and the different workers can come to the machine and can work on that particular machine. Another layout type is process oriented layout. Now in this type of layout we will discuss that what should be the layout in case we are going to produce the low volume and the high variety products. Then there are some work cells layouts, and again students, this type of layout is important for the production of a single product or the group of relevant products. Another type of layout is repetitive and product oriented layout. Now in this type of layout we are interested in the repetitive and continuous production. So these are the different types of layout we will discuss in our today's lecture. One of the most important decisions a firm should take, that is about the location strategy. And I have already told you that there are the different sources through which an organization can have the competitive advantage over their competitors. Among these sources, one of the most important source can also be the location strategy. And I also told you students that now the trend of producing domestically has been changed all over the world because of the increase in globalization factor, and there are many other factors through which now it is important for the different entrepreneurs to find out the location at a particular part of the world even, to so that their operations can be efficiently and effectively being operated in that particular location. And of course this location should be such that it should give a source of competitive advantage for the organizations. So this location strategy is actually increasingly global in nature. Now the different organizations are not thinking only about the location in some domestic environment, but actually they are talking about to have the location of their factory or their distribution outlet at the optimum point of the world where they can operate more efficiently and effectively. And again, this sort of strategy has a significant and direct impact on the cost reduction, both of the fixed cost as well as the variable cost. Another important thing with respect to the location strategy, that these are the sort of decisions which are not the routine decisions, and these are actually the relatively infrequent decisions. Once a decision is being made and the location has been decided and the site has been set up at that particular location, then it will be almost impossible to change the location. So from that perspective, it is very important for the operation manager to have a thorough analysis that whether this sort of location will be suitable for him or his organization or not, because in future if there is something wrong, he will not be able to change the location easily because of that strategic stake of that location. And of course if he frequently want to change the location, then it may not be feasible because of the cost factors and because of the other factors. The objective is to maximize the benefit of location to the firm. So whatever the strategy with regard to the location an operation manager will have, the main objective should be the maximizing the benefits and minimizing the cost with respect to that location factor. Students, location decisions based on low cost require careful consideration. Now, as I told you that location strategy, as I told you that location strategic decision is so important because it is not a routine decision. Actually, it is a very strategic decision, and it is very difficult to change the decision. And once you have placed your site and you have make all the arrangements, then it will not be possible to change this decision. So once in place, location related costs are fixed in place and difficult to reduce. So this is a very important point. Determining the optimal facility location is a good investment. Again, if you are able to go through a proper analysis and you are able to optimally decide a particular location, then it will be a sort of competitive advantage you will have for your company. Now students, cost reduction is not the only factor we concentrate on a particular location. There may be many other factors like the high quality and the specialized inputs. Availability at a particular location may be a very important factor to have your site at a particular location because the different resources, the availability of the different resources and the cost of the different resources may vary from country to country. So there may be the locations in which the high quality material or the raw material may be available for your organization, and so in that particular situation it is always good for the organization to have the site in that particular location. Then students, an environment that encourages investment and local rivalry. Now there are different countries which encourage the foreign investment, and the market requirement and the demand is more with respect to the other locations, and that is also a factor on the basis of which an organization may decide to have a site at a particular location. Then sophisticated local market requirements may also be a very important source for that location strategy. Then local presence of related and supporting industries. This is also very important. Whenever you decide about a particular location for your organization, then you'll have to take into consider about the supporting industries, that whether the supporting supplies will be easily available for the production of your own goods and services or not. So this is another point on the basis of which we can decide about a particular location. So other than cost factors, these are some of the factors we should take into consider, that how we can use any of these factors in order to attain the competitive advantage for our organization. Then students, again I told you that location decision is not a sort of short-term decision or not a routine decision. Is a very strategic decision, is a one-time decision, and once you made this decision, and then it will be very difficult to change the location because of the strategic stakes you will have at that particular location, and these decisions are made infrequently. Therefore the decisions greatly affects both fixed and variable cost. That is very important, that the effect of fixed and the variable cost will actually give you the guideline that whether you should have the company at a particular location or not. If you are not going to attain these cost advantages, then of course you will not prefer that particular location. Then class, once you committed to a location, many resources and cost issues are difficult to change. Now again I am telling you that it is a strategic decision. Once you have located your site and you have provided all the facilities there, then it will be almost impossible to change the decision. Therefore one should be very careful whenever one should decide about the location of their organization. Students, there are different factors which can affect our location decisions and location strategies. The most important factor is the labor productivity. Now again, as I told you, that the location decision also depends on the availability of the certain resources at a particular location. So one of these important resources is labor. So if labor is more productive and is available cheaply at a particular location, of course that will be a very important point which will help you to have a particular location for your organization. Then students, exchange rates and currency rate change is also a very important factor which can affect our location decision, and this currency change prevails over the different times. So this is another important factor which can affect our location decisions. Then students, cost, again I have already told you that cost is the main factor which can affect our location decisions. There are the different types of cost you will have to take into account, like what is the fixed cost at that particular location, what will be the variable cost. Then there are two other very important determinants of cost, that is the tangible cost and intangible cost. Tangible cost like your raw material cost or your other material cost, or the cost for the different taxes. These are sort of cost which can be quantified, which can be measurable, but there can be a different cost which cannot be easily measurable, and we usually refer it as qualitative cost or intangible cost, like quality of work life, that what is the cost of quality of work life available at a particular location. So no doubt that is not measurable, but that may have impact on the organizational performance. So all the cost factors should be taken into account, and these are the factors which can always affect your location decisions. Then students, political risk and cultural values in the different countries also vary. So these are the important points you should always take into account while deciding about the particular location for your organization. Because if there is a political stability in a particular country, of course you can always make the long-term investment in that particular country. But if there is no political stability in a particular country, of course you'll have to decide 100 times that whether you should have the location at that particular country or not. Then students, another important factor is that your location should be such that is near to the different markets, and especially the markets where you want to sell your products and services. Then this proximity should be near to the suppliers, so that the suppliers and the raw materials can be timely, efficiently and effectively available at that particular location. Then proximity to competitors sometimes is also important, because sometimes the competitors about a particular product are being gathered at a particular location, so that they can have more impact on the supply of their goods and services to all over the world. So in this way, the different competitors sometimes have a sort of cluster. This process is actually called clustering, and that cluster can be very helpful for all the competitors and all the relevant firms in order to produce their goods and services efficiently and then distribute these goods and services to the ultimate customers. So sometimes in certain cases it may also be important for the organization that their location should be such that it should be close to the different competitors. Students, let's discuss about the different methods. Up till now we talked qualitatively about the location decisions, that what are the different factors which can be important and what are the different considerations which should be taken into account by the operations manager while they are deciding about a particular location. But now let's discuss some important techniques, statistical, mathematical and fact-based techniques, that how we can find out a particular location for our organization. Now the first method is factor rating method. Now this is a very popular method because a wide variety of factors can be included in the analysis. There are different steps involved in this factor rating method. The first step is develop a list of relevant factors called critical success factors. So students, at the first step, what you will have to do, you will have to find out the critical factors. Now the critical factors with respect to the location decision, because we are discussing that location strategy. So as we discussed, that cost reduction, availability of the raw material, proximity to the suppliers, nearness to the suppliers, as well as the availability of the raw material timely and efficiently. So these are the different factors which can be the critical success factors for the location strategy. So first of all, an operations manager will have to decide about these particular factors, then assign a weight to each factor. Now again students, if you are able to develop, suppose 8 to 10 factors, now all of these factors may not be as important for the organizations. Maybe some organizations want to focus on that cost leadership. The other organizations may want to focus on quality or differentiation. Similarly, maybe the different organizations may have the focus on some other factor which can be important with respect to that location strategy. So what we will do, we will assign the weight according to the importance of that particular factor. In third step, we'll have to develop a scale for each factor. Then again, students, in research, you must have learned that we can use the different scales in order to have a particular rating. So we can use a scale, then score each location for each factor. Now what we will do, we will compare a particular factor with respect to the particular organization, and then we will have to score about the different locations, keeping into account that particular factor. Then multiply score by the weights for each factor for each location. So in this way we will have the weighted scores. Recommend the location with the highest point score. Now if we have different alternatives about the location, and in this way if we are going to have the sum of the different weighted averages, then the highest weighted averages will tell you that what can be the best location for the company. So students, this is a very important method, that is the factor rating method. Now let's discuss a practical example for this factor rating method. Now suppose students, there is a company, and that company has decided about the critical success factors, and the company have listed down these critical factors as you can see in this particular column. Now what is the next step? In the next step we'll have to give the weight. Now you can see that the availability and attitude of the laborers has given the weight of 0.25. So it means for that particular organization this factor is so important, that's why its rate is high with respect to the people to car ratio. If that is a car manufacturing company, that is having the less rate. Similarly, if you see the tax structure is so important sometimes, because that can directly affect your cost. So this factor has been given the highest weight, that is 0.39. So this highest weight means that the company has the strategic importance of this factor, that is tax structure, with respect to the other factors. So according to the importance of the particular factors, we will assign weights to each of these factors, and the sum of these weights should be equal to 1. So that may be a sort of probability, you know. Now suppose we have the two options, that is we want to have a location either in the France or in the Denmark. Now what we will have to do, we will have to compare that particular location with respect to these particular factors. Now see, you see that in France the availability and attitude of labor is good as compared to the Denmark, because the rater has given high rate, that is out of 100 is 70 with respect to that Denmark. So it means in Denmark we can have the advantage with respect to this particular factor, that is labor availability and attitude. Similarly, we'll have to compare all of these factors with respect to the particular location, and we'll have to have rate down each of these locations for all of these factors. Now as the next step, students, what we'll have to do, we'll have to find out the weighted scores, that is these weights will be multiplied by these particular scores for both of the locations, that is for France and Denmark, and accordingly we can have some weighted average, and then we can have a sum for both of these locations, that is the sum of all the weighted averages. As you can see that for France the weighted sum of the weighted averages is 70.4, and that is greater than this one, that is 68 for Denmark. So we will decide about the location, that our organization should have the location in France. So this is the factor rating example, that how we can find out the location for our organization if we have different alternatives, and by the use of these critical factors we can always be able to find out the optimum location for our organization. Then there is another method students, that is the locational break-even analysis. Now this is a method of cost volume analysis used for the industrial locations. Now in this method we use two important variables, that is the cost and the volume we want to produce for our customers. Now again in this method there are three steps involved. First of all, we will have to determine the fixed and the variable cost for each location. Now students, again if we have different alternatives for the different locations, we will have to find out what is the fixed and variable cost with respect to that particular location. Then we can plot this cost for each location on a graph, and then finally we can select the location with lowest total cost for expected production volume. Now let's discuss a particular practical example. Now suppose there are three cities, as you can see, that is Akron, Bowling Green and Chicago. With respect to these three locations, there is a specific fixed cost associated with this particular location. The variable cost is also being computed and listed down in this particular column. Now what we will have to do, we'll have to calculate the total cost, and then what we will do, now how we will calculate the total cost, that will be equal to the fixed cost plus the variable cost, because it is the variable cost which will vary with respect to the level of production. So we will multiply this variable cost factor by the certain volume, which is 2000 units in this particular case. So we can get the total cost in this way. Now students, what we will do, we'll have to plot down this total cost in a graph by taking the volume on the x-axis, by taking the cost or the total cost on y-axis. Now the total cost factor for the three different locations can be plotted in the form of the straight lines in this graph. Now you can see students, these are the particular points which are denoted by the different colored dots for the different locations. Now as you know, we want to have the volume of 2000 units. Now you can see from this graph that for this volume, that is 2000 units, the least cost line is at this particular spot, that is for the Bowling Green cost curve. So we can minimize our cost if we can opt for this particular alternative, and by choosing this particular alternative our total cost will be minimized. So this is another way we can find out the optimum location for our setup. Yet there is another important method which can be used for the optimum selection of location. This method is known as center of gravity method. Now this method finds the location of distribution center that minimizes the distribution cost. So this method is related to the distribution cost, that how we can minimize the distribution cost for our products and services. And that is a very important factor again for the location strategies. In this particular method, the operations manager will have to take into account and should consider some important things like the location of markets and the volume of goods shipped to those markets, and that is what is the quantity of goods they want to ship to those particular markets. Then shipping cost or the distance. So these are the three most important factors which the operations manager should consider carefully if he want to use this technique of center of gravity method for finding out the optimum location for its organization. Now students, how we can use this particular method? Place existing locations on a coordinate grid. Now what we do in this method, we will make a graph. We can decide about the origin and scale. Now you can always take any arbitrary origin as well as the arbitrary scale, so that you can have drawn all of the particular locations on that particular graph. But by plotting the different locations on that particular graph, you will have to taken into account the relative distance of the particular locations. Now after plotting all of these locations on the graph, you may calculate the x and y coordinates for the center of gravity. And in this particular method, one of the assumptions is that we'll have to assume that the cost is directly proportional to the distance and the volume shift. That is, whenever the distance of a particular location will be increased, or the volume to be shipped towards the different locations increased, then of course your cost will also be increased. So you'll have to take into account this particular assumption if you want to use this particular method. Now students, this is the formula for calculating the x coordinate. That is, x coordinate will be equal to summation dq over summation q, where d is the x coordinate of location I, and similarly y coordinate is equal to summation dq over summation q, where d I y is equal to y coordinate of the location I, and qi is the quantity of the goods moved to or from the location I. So this is the formula we can use for this method. Now let's discuss a simple example. Let's again suppose we have the 4 different locations with us, and again first of all we'll have to plot these particular locations on a graph by taking any arbitrary origin or any arbitrary scale. So the scale and the origin should be such that you can easily plot all of these locations in a single graph. Now students, again you can see the different coordinates, so that is the x coordinate and y coordinate for the different locations which have been given in this particular graph. And after, according to these particular coordinates, we have pointed out that what is the location of these different cities and countries. Now what we will have to do, we will have to find out the number of containers shipped per month. So we will have to find out the quantity of goods which are to be transported to these particular locations. So this is the hypothetical quantity written here in this particular example. That is 2000 units are to be supplied to Chicago, 1000 units are to be supplied to Pittsburgh. Similarly, these units are to be supplied to New York and Atlanta. Now what we will do, we will calculate the x coordinate and y coordinate for all of these locations. Now how we can calculate this x coordinate? This will be equal to 30. Now this is the 30 is the x coordinate of Chicago. This will be multiplied by the quantity, that is 2000, plus x coordinate of Pittsburgh, 90 multiplied by 1000, that is the quantity supplied to Pittsburgh, plus 130, that is the x coordinate of New York, multiplied by 1000, that is the units again supplied to New York, plus 60, that is the x coordinate of Atlanta, and multiplied by 2000 units which are to be supplied to Atlanta, divided by the sum of all of these quantities, that is 2000 plus 1000 plus 1000 plus 2000. So if we solve this particular equation, we will have the x coordinate equal to 66.7. In the same way, we can have the y coordinate equal to 93.3. So students, again we will have to plot these x coordinate and y coordinate on this particular graph. As you can see, that this is the particular point, that is the center of gravity actually. These are the x and y coordinates we have just computed. Now it means if you want to operate for these 4 locations and you want to minimize your cost, so this will be your best location in order to distribute the products from this particular location. So in this way we can use this center of gravity method, that where should be the location of your distribution outlet, so that your total cost of transportation may be minimized. So students, we have discussed 3 very important methods, that how we can make the different calculations and how we can use the different facts and figures in order to decide about the particular location. So again, this is a sort of scientific decision, because we are not taking decisions on the basis of certain assumptions or the observations or the experience, but again we are using some mathematical techniques and some graphical techniques as well in order to have the optimum decision about the location for your organization. So this is the importance of these particular methods actually. Now students, let's discuss about the strategic importance of layout decisions. Layout means that what should be the setup of the different facilities available either in your office or in your warehouse or in your retail outlets, so that the movement of the people as well as the movement of the different material from the one department or the other department may be more feasible and may be more cost effective. So the objective of layout strategy is to develop a cost effective layouts that will meet a firm's competitive needs. Now students, again, as I told you about the location, that sometimes location can be a very important source of a competitive advantage. In the same way, the layout strategies and a particular layout to be decided out by the operation manager can be a very important source sometimes, and through a better layout you can always have the competitive advantage over your competitors. There are some very important considerations which the operations manager should always keep into mind if he's going to decide the layout design. Among these factors, the most important factors are the high utilization of space, equipment and people. That is, you should be accommodated all of your equipments, all of your inventory in the limited available space in a way that the movement for the different workers and the communication between the different workers can be optimum, can be effectively and efficiently utilized. So this is the importance of the better utilization of all of these entities, that is space, equipment and people as well. So the ultimate purpose is improved flow of information, materials or people, and if this flow of information is effective and efficient, then of course this can increase not only the motivation level of the employees, but a particular quality environment, I would say, will also be enhanced in that particular organization. As I told you, that this layout design will help to improve the employee morale and safer working conditions. Now another very important point while deciding about the layout, we'll have to take into account the safety factor as well, that is to provide the healthy and safety work conditions for our workers. So ultimately that is a source of motivation for them. Then most importantly, students, another important objective of this layout design is the improved customer and client interaction. Now this is a very important point, that how we can effectively and efficiently interact with our customers. So your layout should be a sort of a layout that it can always be helpful for easy interaction with your customers and efficient interaction, I would say, with your customers, and this efficient interaction will ultimately have the impact on the organizational viability, and it will help to achieve the profitability as well. There are the different types of layouts, students, which can be used in the organizational settings. One of the layout is office layout. Now office layout is actually meant for maintaining a particular working environment within your offices, that how your furniture will be placed, what will be the location of the different workers, so that they can easily communicate with each other, and there should be no hindrance while communicating with each other. So this type of layout is generally required for the office environment. Then second type is the retail layout. This type of layout may be prevailed in some superstore or some retail or wholesale outlets. And again, the purpose of superstore retail layout is to give more convenience to our customers, so that they can easily have the approach to the different commodities. Similarly, the retail layout objective is to have the particular shelf location for the different products and services, so that the customers can easily identify the different brands, and again that will be helpful for increasing the sales of your goods. Then warehouse layout will have to take into account about the particular space available in that warehouse, because warehouse is a source of storing the huge amount of inventory. So the layout should be such that maximum of the inventory can be effectively and efficiently stored, and there may not be some handling problems in a particular type of layout. Then fixed position layout, students. Again, this is a type of layout in the heavy machinery is being fixed at a particular location, and the different workers will have to move towards that machinery so that they can work efficiently and effectively. Then process oriented layout. This type of layout is again sometimes met for low demand but high variety sort of products, and there is a sort of different activities in a particular process, and the product will have to pass out all of these different activities or tasks. So this is the process oriented layout. Then work cell layout is usually meant for the production of a single product or the group of the related products. Product oriented layout is another type of layout in which we are interested in some repetitive or continuous production for the identified products. So these are the different types of layout. Let's discuss these types one by one. So in office layout, we actually want to have the grouping of workers, their equipment and spaces to provide the comfort, safety and movement of information. So the ultimate purpose of this office layout should be the efficient movement of information among the different entities, among the different departments and among the different workers of the organization. So that will have the healthy impact on the working environment, and of course this will guide the workers that how they can efficiently and effectively achieve the organizational objectives. You can see in this particular figure that this is a type of layout for our office where all of the workers can easily communicate with each other. The furniture is designed in such a fashion that there will be the chances of effective and efficient communication between all of these workers. So this type of layout is always desired for the offices so that they can have the better movement of information as well as the better movement of workers by going from the one department or another department. Movement of information is a main distinction, typically in state of flux due to frequent technological changes. So this is very important that we will have to move the information efficiently and effectively. If the layout is not being designed in an optimal manner, there may be the hindrance in the flow of information, so that will not be good for the organization, and that can badly affect the working environment within the organization. The other layout, students, is the retail layout, and its objective is to maximize profitability per square foot of floor space. Now this is very important that when you take into account the store layout, or when we discuss the retail layout, then their main objective is to maximize the profitability per square foot of the floor space. So actually they want to optimally utilize the space available. Sales and profitability vary directly with the customer exposure. Now this is very important. Customer exposure is the ultimate objective of this layout, and of course if there is more customer exposure, there will be more chances of sales of your goods, and again it will have the impact on the profitability. So this is the main objective of retail layout. There are 5 important considerations which should always be kept in mind by the different operation managers while deciding about the retail layout. Now these considerations are: we'll have to locate high drawn items around the periphery of the stores. So this is very important, students. The daily or the routine use items should be available nearest to the customers, and they should be at the prominent place and easily, conveniently spaced, so that the customers may not have any problem for going towards that items. Then use prominent locations for the high impulse and high margin items. If there are high profit margin items for your organization, you can always again locate those particular items at the prominent locations, so that just by entering in the store, the customer may have the direct eye contact on those important items. Then distribute power items to both sides of an ASL and disperse them to increase viewing of other items. Now again, the power items are the items which can be very important for your organization with respect to the profit margin or with respect to any other reason. These items are generally placed on both sides of the different shelves, so that by movement on either side, the customer may have the eye contact on these particular items. Then you can always use the end ASL locations, because end ASL locations are always be more prominent and more visible to the customers. Then convey mission of the store through the careful positioning of the lead of department. Now this is another very important point, students. If you want to have a certain positioning for your organization, now suppose you want to have the certain food supply items, or have a sort of restaurant in your very large superstore, so you can always position that particular restaurant or food items location at a point where they can easily go to the particular location, and customers may have the good exposure to this particular location. So what will happen, that by the prominent location and position, the customers will be able to have the idea that what is basically the mission in your mind, and you can always highlight your proper mission before your customers. So students, this is an example of a store layout. You can see that how the different commodities are being assembled and placed at the different locations. Manufacturers pay fees to retailers to get the retailers to display slot of their product. So this is again very important, as the manufacturers may have paid fees in order to prominently display their own products. So you should always keep into mind this particular factor, and you should always display your key manufacturer products at the prominent places and at the good shelf places. There are some very important factors which should always be kept into mind while deciding about the retail outlet, that is the limited shelf space. So in every retail outlet there is a limited shelf space, and you will have to decide that how you can optimally utilize this space, so that you can be able to display the most important products more efficiently and effectively. An increasing number of new products and closer control of inventory. So these are some of the important factors which should be considered while designing a particular retail layout. Students, another type of layout is the warehousing and storage layouts, and the objective is to optimize the trade-offs between handling cost and cost associated with warehouse space. It maximizes the total cube of the warehouse, utilize its full volume while maintaining the low material handling cost. Now with respect to the warehouse layout, it is very important that the design and the layout of the warehouse should be such that the handling may be so easy and the handling cost may be minimized. So the different shelves and the different storage racks should be placed in such a manner that the workers may not have the problem while handling the different sort of material. Another important point, that this shelf space and the different racks on which the different goods may be stored should be placed in such a manner that maximum of your inventory may be adjusted within the limited available space. So these are the important considerations, students, with respect to the warehousing layouts. Now, there are important factors and the cost associated with the transactions involved in the different warehouses. This may be the incoming transport cost, storage cost, finding and moving the material cost, outgoing transport, equipment, people, material, supervision, insurance, depreciation cost. So the ultimate purpose for the operations manager is to minimize all of these costs so that there may be the least chances of any damage and spoilage. Students, this is another layout. You can see that there are different storage racks which are placed parallelly, and again, if these are parallel like that, they can the workers can easily move through these racks, and the handling may be more easy. And again, you can have a storage racks, then you can have a certain receiving docks where your goods will be initially received. So by having a particular space for all of these inventories, you can efficiently manage the available space within your warehouse. Now students, this is an example of warehouse layout, and this is a traditional layout where the different stores are arranged parallel in a more traditional way. But again, we should have a sort of layout for our warehouse in which we can handle, we can store, and we can minimize the space occupied by the different inventories. So that is the ultimate purpose of warehouse layout. The next important point of layout is the fixed position layout. Now students, these are the types of layouts in which the particular and heavy machineries are fixed at a particular point, and the product remains in one place. Workers and equipments come into that particular site, because we cannot move the heavy machinery or heavy installments, but the workers and the equipment may have brought to that particular location. Again, the important factors to be considered for this type of layout should be the limited space at site, then different materials required at different stages of the project, and the volume of the materials needed is dynamic. So these are the important factors we will have to consider when we are designing the layout for fixed positions layout. Then students, next type is process oriented layout. Now again, this is a type of layout in which we are interested in low volume and high variety production, and the different similar machines and equipments are grouped together in this particular layout, flexible and capable of handling a wide variety of products or services. Now this type of layout should be such designed that it should be able to handle the different variety of the products and services. Scheduling can be difficult, and setup, material handling and labor cost can be high. So these are the very important factors to be considered in this particular type of layout. And again, you should have the scheduling and material handling manners in such a way. So you should have the scheduling and material handling in such a way that the overall cost may be minimized. Now students, again you can see this example of process oriented layout, that is a particular process is to be passed through the different locations. As you can see that this is the setup for a particular hospital. Now what is being done in this particular hospital, that the different patients will have to go according to the appropriate departments for the related services and the related disease diagnosis, and for the different types of tests. So this is the example of process oriented layout, in which there may be the different type of services to be provided to the different customers. Process oriented layouts should be targeted to arrange the work centers so as to minimize the cost of material handling, and the basic cost elements in this particular case are the number of loads or people moving between centers, and distance loads or people move between the centers. Now this is very important, that we will have to have an estimate that what are the different number of loads, that is the number of peoples which are to be moved between the different centers in that process oriented layout. Then what is the distance between those centers in which your customer will have to move. So these are the two important considerations, and if you are able to have the data about these particular variables, you can easily and efficiently design a good process oriented layout for your organization. Then friends, there are some work cells. Now this is a sort of layout which is actually used for the production of a single product or the group of related products. It recognizes people and machines into groups to focus on single products or product groups. Group technology identifies products that have similar characteristics for particular cells. Volume must justify the cells. Cells can be recognized and reconfigured as designs or the volume changes. So these are again some important considerations while you are designing out these work cells layout. Now students, this is an example. You can see that this is the current and traditional layout, and you can see a worker is working here, and another worker is working here in this closed environment, and there is the least interaction between these two workers. So the improved layout may be like that. Now again, there will be easy communication, and there will be easy interaction between these two workers. So these are some of the important points which should be taken into account while designing the different types of layouts. Then friends, repetitive and product oriented layouts. These layouts are again meant for the repetitive and continuous products of most importantly the identified or identical products. It is organized around the products or families of similar high volume low variety products. So this type of layout is actually meant for the high volume and the low variety products. Volume is adequate for high equipment utilization. Product demand is stable enough to justify high investments in specialized equipments. Product is standard or approaching a phase of life cycle that justifies investment. Supplies of raw materials and components are adequate and of uniform quality. So students, in this type of layout, we generally have a standard product, and we generally have the uniform quality requirements for that particular product, but the volume of these production may be high. So for that particular scenario, we can always have this product oriented layout. Now you can see in the different organizational setup, there can be the different departments like fabrication line, which builds components on a series of machines, and machine space should be there. Required mechanical or engineering changes to balance. So this is another department or another cell in which the different workers are working. Then there may be the assembly line, which puts the fabricated parts together at a series of workstations. Again, this is paced by the work task, balanced by moving tasks. Both types of lines must be balanced so that the time to perform the task at each station is the same. So that is very important, that while the movement of the different product is there among the different these lines, then the time to perform the work at each of these stations should be same. And you may also have identified the different activities which may be done parallel in these different lines or cells. So this is the product oriented layout, and again this is meant for the high volume and low variety products. So students, this is the end of our today's lecture. We discussed about the importance of location and layout, that how these decisions can be important for the operations managers, and how these decisions can sometimes be a very important competitive advantage for your organization. Okay class, see you next time. Khuda Hafiz.